Energy. It is all around us, both seen and unseen. It affects all the lives within humanity, our great planet Earth, and the entire universe. It is a conscious cosmic matrix, an ever-evolving cycle, creating, breaking down, and recreating. This is Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Andrea tells us that energy is the foundation of our human experience, intrinsically affecting every facet of our lives, our perceptions, choices, and actions, as well as the challenges, opportunities, and people we attract. So now, please welcome the host of Connected, Andrea Dragonfly.
Hey, good people. Welcome to another episode of Connected. I'm your host, Andrea Dragonfly, and here we are doing these last shows on the big island of Hawaii. So this is my new little studio. So bear with me as I figure it all out, right? This is a live show. So if you would like to interact, please do. You can certainly send a comment through Facebook to our engineer team, and I can find that up on my screen here. Or you can even call in. So if you feel the desire to clarify, ask any questions, just kind of get your voice out there, I would always love to interact and invite you to join me on the show, right? So we are right on the eve of the holiday of love, right? So this show is being recorded on the 13th of February. And so I'm working with the archetype of the Cupid, the cherub, and also the god Cupid, which is a Roman god, and Eros, which is the Greek god. So they're the exact same god. However, they are celebrated, in different cultures at the same time even. And they kind of have a little bit of a difference between them. And when we think of Cupid, most often, I'm going to ask what comes to mind, right? So most often we have this cherub that is of youthful spirit. Oftentimes it can even be depicted like a child or even younger, like a baby, like a little baby, which is always interesting to me because really that is about the purity of love. And it's if we think about what is pure love, how can we really kind of really bring it in to the very base of purity. We think of a child because a child can do no harm at that point, right? It's just a child is just love. It knows nothing else but connection, and it just has the energy of love. Now, the thing about Cupid, and so of course we're looking at Cupid within the Roman mythology. So Cupid is also, comes from he is the son of Venus. And I believe he is the, you know what? I'm so sorry. I should know this, but his father was forbidden love between Venus and him. So if you know this, write in the comment and help me figure this one out. And Jupiter is also known as Zeus. And Jupiter was like, yeah, no, you can't have this love affair. So Zeus or Jupiter was trying to prevent Venus from being in love with this god. So I'm sorry, I can't remember his name at the moment. And, but they had what would then became like this forbidden love and this desired love and this passionate love. So love has many, many faces to it. And through all of that, they ended up having 5 children. And one of those children was Cupid. And so Cupid came in full of this fiery energy. I feel like this is also the god of like Apollo. However, Apollo would be more of the Greek version. So whatever Apollo was, oh, I think it's Mars. Actually, not Apollo. I think it was Mars. So I think that's exactly right. Sorry, I should have probably looked this up a little bit before I got on here. Um, but and so that passionate, that fiery, that willing to do whatever they can do to come together is the mother and father of Cupid. And so as Cupid comes into the world, Cupid was born with wings, right? And so not all gods are born with wings. So this is how Cupid gets the wings, and how it also kind of connects to the angel realm, the angelic realm. And so even within that, Cupid was a mischievous child. Cupid was always up to almost like a trickster. And this is where we can kind of connect into love. And if we think about our lives and all the different types of love, right? All the different people that we've loved, there's been sometimes very tumultuous experiences around some of those, depending on how old you are, right? Because if you're younger and you're new to love and you're just now starting to explore, this is going to say, hey, guess what? Love is a process. There's many faces to love, right? Many different ways love is going to show up, and many feats that we have to overcome in order for us to maybe get that love, right? Because sometimes there's unrequited love where we love someone and they don't love us back, right? So these are myths. This is even one of the myths that, in the story of Cupid. So if you do any research on Cupid, you can see how Cupid is also somewhat of a trickster. And Cupid could come in and he had two arrows, or two types of arrows. He had the golden arrow that when he plunged it into another person, that person would fall madly in love, usually with the first person they would see. He also had another arrow. It was almost kind of like a poisonous arrow. And this was the arrow that he would point, he could point at somebody and then they would be kind of like disgusted or not wanting anything to do with that person. So it's just like, oof, no thank you, right? Repulsed by that person. So Cupid could play both games. And so this is definitely the story of how we as beings go through the collective experience of love. That's why for many of us, most of us, I'm going to say 99% of humanity, well, I can't say that because I don't really know that's true, but a good majority of humanity, we get to have multiple loves, just like having some boyfriends. If you're a woman, girlfriends, well, whatever gender you are, right? So having some different types of loves to feel out to see, is this person right for me, right? Do we find that connection with one another that allows us to really deepen into that beautiful, true ecstasy of love, that passion, that, oh my God, this is the person I want to have a family with, or this is the person I want to grow old with, or share my life with, or whatever that looks like, right? Because not every person that comes into your life is going to be that person. They're going to test you on those. So it's the journey of love. It's the collective journey of love. And so I'm using Cupid because Eros actually comes from the Greek mythology, and that was kind of a little bit of a different mythology. Now there's a couple of versions. One version is that Eros is a primordial being that came in with the other gods in the pantheon. And again, I want to just kind of review pantheon, because the pantheon is, I talked about this in the last show. And a pantheon is really the whole family of the god and goddesses. They are the collective family. And so we can think about them, and they're going to also represent all sorts of different energetics, which we're going to call archetypes. And I'm going to go into that absolutely throughout today's show. So that's exactly what we're looking at, right? So, but Eros has a different story. However, they're very similar. There's going to be a lot of similarities between them, because there's always similarities within collective stories and pantheons throughout the world, there's always going to be the god or goddess of love, right? Or, the one that's going to, really kind of open up the big collective experience. Because when we talk about the collective experience, every being, every human being is going to have their own experience and love. And it's going to look many different ways, right? So even if you think about your experience and what you've learned already, wherever you are in your life, and you even think about, let's just say, your siblings. If you have siblings, let's look at that. And if you don't have siblings, let's look at your peers, the people that you're closest to, that are in your, your own age range, right? Or whatever, it doesn't matter. But we look at, how even if you were in the same family with this kind of raised in some, certain values and customs, you and your family members, cousins even, are going to have, everybody's going to have a different experience to love. Even within the family, the the nuclear family as well as the extended family, right? So, and then we can bring it out into the community, our people, our peers. We're all going to have this different version. So this is that collective, and that is going to be so diverse, right? And so this is why mythology comes in to tell us stories, to help us remember that we're not alone, that whether we actually have fallen madly in love and then had our heart broken, or that, the one that we pursued didn't pursue us back with rejection, all of these stories live in mythology to help us grow ourselves and to grow our consciousness, to grow ourselves in unconditional love, compassion, forgiveness, which are definitely my 3 words of the Christing energy that helps us evolve along the way, right? And so Eros also now can have a similar story to the Roman story, where Eros is the son of Aphrodite. And so even when we look at mythology, Eros, he grows out of that cherub. He grows out of that, what would be the young little angel, causing chaos and trickster energy with love, grows and matures into that love, into the God of love, the God of passion, the God of desire, right? And so there's the mythology story of Eros and Psyche. Now, this also can cross over to, I believe, there's some interchanging, because I kind of looked this up online, and knowing that the different pantheons have different stories, I think that in the modern day, we still want to blend them all together. So you may find that, Psyche is also in the Roman story as well as in the Greek mythology. It gets a little convoluted sometimes. And so I'm just going to ask you to do, play with this. Go do some research, look it up, do the YouTube versions, and find little, storylines that will show you the mythology and whatnot, because these stories are very personal and we can all identify with them in one way or another, right? And so when we ask, if is love in the air, we're really coming into this place that says, is the angel or is the god, the winged god in the air, that is going to either activate that love that you might already have with your partner if you're in relationship, or if you're not in relationship, if there's going to be a new partner coming your way, right? So there, of course, there's many ways we can look at this. And with this show, it's always an invitation. Everybody's going to talk about this in a different way, spinning it from a different angle, right? So right now we're really looking at gods and archetypes, because the whole Valentine holiday, which is a, it's the, what do I want to call it? It's more of the kind of national holiday, right? Is really a collective energy. And so many people I've met along my travels in life, some people are really into Valentine's Day and some people are very against it. They're like, oh, yeah, that's just a Hallmark holiday, right? Where, it's all about consumerism and it's all about buying things, through the flowers and the candy and the gifts and all that kind of stuff. Well, there's still a collective energy. And that collective energy, so those people who are like, humbug that Valentine's, is I'd like to invite those people, if you're one of them, or even if you're not, but one, you can invite them as well, is to really connect into the collective love, the unconditional love that heals. Because so many of us have wounded hearts. We come in, we want to have this amazing love experience. We go through the process of, the dating, some people are, have gone through the marriage and then the divorce, or maybe whatever that is, the wounding, the breakup. Maybe there was never a marriage there, but there was like a deeply invested emotion, a deep investment of oneself, right? And of course, this is the journey of the human experience. This is the hero's journey. We're all on a hero's journey of love because it's not always going to be easy. Love is one of the hardest things because it wants to continue to expand us bigger and bigger. And sometimes in order for us to expand larger in love, our heart needs to break. It needs to break open. Needs to get shattered or annihilated or like blown to smithereens so that all we are just this big open heart. And sometimes we're really wounded in that place for a period of time. And it's in that wound and it's in that hero's journey that I talked about way back during the solstice time of summer. And where we begin to learn and process and go through the, what it really truly means to really open our hearts in a new way. And this is also part of death. I know some people who've been experiencing death recently and how heart-wrenching death is. And one of the beautiful gifts of death, because we all of us, part of our initiation of humanity, of growing ourselves and growing our hearts, is that death grows our hearts. It connects us to the fact that we are never not with that person, that person came specifically to be with us, to grow us in love. Now, that person could be a family member, it could be a parent, a child, a loved one, a partner, all of those different things, or it could be a friend, a best, closest, nearest personal connection, right? And so, or maybe you haven't had that yet. And death for you has been the grandparent that you were never really close with, which certainly those exist, right? And so we're looking at how our hearts definitely expand through sometimes our heart needing to be hurt and wounded. So if you're on that plane where you have the wounded heart and you're a bah humbug of Valentine's Day, I really invite just the collective energy of love, the healing of love to come in. Connect into the fact that love is what actually lifts humanity up and moves us forward. It's how we do evolve in our consciousness. And so this is that opportunity to really kind of connect into that love, to grow yourself so that you can attract a healthier, more healed love to you and really begin to connect into that more exalted love, right? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we're going to dive back into the gods, the goddesses, archetypes, and move ourselves forward along this beautiful journey of working with some of the most amazing allies for our own personal growth. So I'll see you back here in 2.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense Radio Show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Hey there, welcome back. All right, so we are talking about love. We're talking about the archetype of love, which is also the cherub, Cupid. And then Cupid is then connected to the cherub. So that's the archetype right there. So the god is Cupid, or the god is Eros. And Cupid then is depicted as a symbol. And the symbol is the archetype. So archetypes are these symbols. Archetypes are this collective understanding of, let's see, I'm going to pull up my notes here because I just want to get my definition down here. So the archetype is really like, it's kind of, connected to the gods and goddesses, as I was talking about, because they, way back then, were the original energetic, the original symbol of these different qualities, these different ways of being. And we all have this within us. All of these archetypes live within us, some of them far more stronger than others. And so part of our journey in life is to really kind of connect in to how that archetype lives within ourselves even. So they're kind of what's known as a primordial image, a character energy, or a pattern of circumstances that reoccurs throughout literature and history, and that's consistent enough to be considered a universal concept or a universal situation. Okay, so I pulled that off the internet. I do believe that that is something along, and so we're looking at something certainly along the lines that Carl Jung is a psychologist. And so he also was looking at history, looking at literature, looking at the way in which these different archetypal energies live within us, right? And so he adopted the term kind of more of this archetypal energy through the collective unconscious. And so he looks at the conscious and he looks at the personal unconscious and then the collective unconscious. And so all of these archetypes are energies that live within the collective, within our own collective unconscious. And then throughout our lives, we experience them on the personal. So this is where they come in with the personal unconscious. Now, I am actually, what I would say, going through another life change. I would say that I'm on my fourth turning or my fourth birthing or rebirthing. And so when I say that, what I mean is that my first birth was my infancy up until about 18. And that was my childhood. And that was a very specific life and a very specific energy of my youth, my childhood youth. And in that, there were very specific archetypal energies that were playing out within me at that time, right? I had the trickster energy. I had the rebel energy. I had, you know, I I had all, I had the victim energy, and so here's these different, now I have these different archetypes in front of me, but most of all we have the fool. So I'm going to kind of pull this up, and this is the beginning. This is the beginning to our life experience. And so the fool is an archetype that is naive, that's naive, naivete, and we begin and we embark on these new journeys. So in childhood, we're all going to have different ones. The athlete. I was far more an athlete in my youth than I have been in the later parts of my life, right? And so these are different parts of the archetype that I can connect to. Then when I was 18, I left. Hey, I'm back. Sorry, that's I had a computer glitch on my end, being across the world in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. You never know how things are going to go. So thank you for your patience and standing by. But we had a glitch, and I got the knocked off the internet. Um, so I'm now moving into my 18 and into this next phase of my rebirthing. So it's kind of like when I was 18, I left my familiar. I left, and this is also the hero's journey. Again, talking about this way back, in June, and so there's the hero, the heroine, and embarking on this new journey, returning to being the new fool again, naive to the greater world around me, right? And in that area of my life, new different experiences were coming my way. So some of those different archetypes that were coming into my life at those times were, the alchemist, right? I was learning about information. This is where I was beginning to come into understanding wisdom and magic and all of these different wisdom traditions that I wasn't taught before. So those are also some of the different archetypes that I was connecting into, right? And then early on, I became a mother. And so the mother archetype came in. The teacher archetype came in. The student archetype came in, right? So my life was filled with these different archetypes at that time. And then from 18 to about 40, I then embarked on a new rebirthing, a life, death, rebirth process. And that's when everything fell apart for me. That's when I was going through my divorce. That's when I was going through my sister's death. I was going through community change. I was going through, losing half of my family, losing half of my community, losing my identity. So many things were happening right at that time. And so I had to come into this whole new place. And in that place of sabotaging, and so the saboteur, I was sabotaging, and I was having to go through this very dark walk of life, and really meet the shadow aspects of myself. And so in that place, there was all sorts of different parts of myself that um, were really kind of showing up: the victim, the wounded child, you know, and so the beggar in certain ways, right? And so I was really in these different places of having to understand my journey, and these different archetypal energies were showing me. Did I know it all at the time? I think in reflection, we look back. It's like, oh yeah, I can see that. Oh yeah, I can understand that. And the reason why I am sharing, all of this is because, well, first of all, this is our journey. Now that was about 10 years, 10 years of kind of shadowy. It was not all 10 years was shadow, but I say 7 of those 10 years had a very shadowy component of having to really look at myself and look at what wasn't working, or what did I, what new ways of life did I need to shift. Let me see if I can say that differently. What do I need to shift in myself to have a different experience to life? What were my beliefs at that time that weren't working for me, right? How can I grow and expand and look at them within these different shadowy archetypes that were showing up for me at those times, right? So like the femme fatale, using sexuality post-divorce as a way to try to get things, or whatever. And if I look back, what was that? I'm not trying to get certain types of, I'm not trying to explain myself on that. I just picked this one up here. But there's certain elements, the femme fatale, to use our sexuality to find people to be interested in us, right? To weave to make us feel good, make us feel wanted, make us feel, that we're still attractive, or whatever it is during those times post-divorce when life is messy and you're a mess, right? Or I'm speaking for me when I was a mess, right? So, all of that kind of comes in. And here I am now in the 4th journey of my rebirthing, because after that whole part, it's almost like I had to leave my old life behind, and I'm moving into something new. I'm here in Hawaii. I said goodbye to my home in Colorado. Now, I don't know if I'll be back there, but at this moment, I'm living in the mystery. I have no idea where I'll end up. Right now, I'm on the big island of Hawaii, and I might be here for a few months. I might be here for a few years. Who knows? I don't know that. So I'm now embarking on this new journey. And I've been working with the archetypal energies just because it's the season. I was talking about this a few weeks ago, especially about, the changing of the guard, right? And that changing of the guard is that I work with archetypal energies that to come in, that are going to help build my character, help me look deep within myself to see what is it within me that I want to strengthen so that I can actually grow myself forward. I can evolve myself on a soul level. I talked about this in my little blurb on the social medias. It's like when we can really connect in, we can grow ourselves, evolve our souls, and expand our consciousnesses, right? On this epic journey of our lives. And so I also talked about how we can do this with the gods and the goddesses. Now, again, each one of them is the original. It's the original archetype. If we think about the trickster, we think of Loki, or at least I do. It depends on what you know about some of the gods and goddesses. Now, not all of the archetypes not all of the gods and goddesses will have a very specific type of archetype, right? So I mean, we have we have the father archetype. And so we also have, like, who's the father of the pantheons. We have the divine mother archetype. Who's the mother? In the Greek pantheon, we're looking at Zeus and we're looking at Hera, right? And Odin is the father of the Norse. And I'm not going to be able to remember all of the mothers and the fathers and the different ones, but this is where we can begin to see how they kind of play out. So there's also the father-son, right? And so even like the battles between the fathers and the sons, and through the different pantheons. And this lives within all these different cultures throughout the history of humanity. These are the collective stories, and they really are mirroring our own versions, our own stories that many of us are going through within our own lives. The father-son challenges, right? The son always just wants to be accepted by the father, wants to be acknowledged, wants to be celebrated, right? The relationship between the mother and the daughter, and being able to, pass on and be honored, and being, carrying forth the love and nurturing through each, of the cycles without the martyrdom, within the empowerment of one, right? So we're going to see these throughout these different mythologies and different stories, see jealousies, through, through love and beauty. This is where we have stories, of course, with Venus and Cupid, and Venus gets very jealous of the beautiful maiden Psyche, and wants, and kind of in her mythology, Psyche becomes doomed or destined because Psyche is just as beautiful as Venus, which creates this jealousy. She wants to be the most beautiful woman in the world, right? And here's this human, this, maiden. And so she wants her to marry a monster. And monster is another archetypal energy even. And so asks her son, Cupid, to go ahead and have her fall in love with this monster. So this monster is going to come from the ocean, and they tie her up so that, and then she asks Cupid to put his golden arrow into her, so that when she sees the monster, she'll fall madly in love with the monster, and she'll be happy ever after going into the sea with the monster and becoming the monster's wife. But when Cupid sees her, he sees how beautiful she is, and he says no, and he ends up fumbling, and he pricks his own finger, or pricks himself with his own arrow, and he falls madly in love with her. And so he then actually takes her, and he hides her in his beautiful God kingdom. And then and so this becomes this whole story. And then, but the thing about this is that this is about love. This is about Psyche. She can't know who her husband is. He marries her, but he will give her everything. He'll give her the most incredible life. However, she can't know his true identity. She just has to trust. And in that, he comes to her every night in the dark when she can't see what his face looks like. But he gives her everything, and he sends her all the love, and he love bombs her in all the kinds of different ways, right? And so he's working with her, but her sisters are like, don't you want to know who your husband is? What if he's the monster? What if he's the monster? And they keep kind of egging her on and wanting her, and they create doubt in her. She has everything that she can want, but the sisters come in because they're jealous, and they create doubt in her. Now the story goes on, and but these are the stories of that when we even have the most beautiful love, there's something that creeps in that creates doubt even within that love, right? even though, and of course, she can't see the true nature of this love, she has to trust. And some of that for us women, this is the story, this is the psychology story of what all we women go through in our whole trajectory of being a woman in life. This is the story of Psyche. She is the archetypal story of what we women go through and what our ultimate goal is for us to overcome in our lives as the female. Now I'm going to take a quick break, and when we get back here, I'm going to finish that up and carry forward with our gods, goddesses, and archetypes. All right, I'll see you back here in 2.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. You know, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Okay, welcome back. So, looking at the story of Psyche. Now, this is also where Carl Jung comes in as the psychologist, and he talks about anima and animus. And so anima is within the masculine. The masculine connects with the anima, which is the feminine face of divinity. But it's also all of these different archetypes of the divine feminine. And so it could be everything from the nurturing, very loving, sensual feminine to the mother type of energy of the feminine. But it can also be the sabotaging feminine. It can be the deceptive energies and the destructive energies as well. And so for the male, the masculine, part of their journey in life is to really connect in to the divine feminine even within themselves. And so this is how they experience the feminine outside. So the external world is mirroring for them in the feminine what it is they need to strengthen or connect to or heal within themselves. And this is the masculine journey, and that's also known as the anima. The animus is the other version of that. That's where we women connect into the divine masculine energies. And that where we actually need to overcome our own challenges and not be, I'm just a woman, can you do that for me? It's where we actually have to step forward and figure it out and problem solve and do these things for ourselves, and that this is the journey. Now, when we talk about Psyche and Cupid, this is the journey, or Psyche and Eros, because they are interchangeable in many different ways that the myth shows up online, that this is the journey of Psyche, that she has to go through the impossible tasks in order for her to go through, what I'm just going to do this very quickly because I could spend the rest of the whole time on this myth alone. But what she ends up doing is she listens to her sisters, and she goes ahead and she wants to see who her husband is. Is he the monster? And he lights the candle while he's sleeping. And she brings the candle over and she sees that it's Cupid, or Eros, the most beautiful god of the pantheon. And that's her husband. But a little bit of the oil drops from the oil lamp and drops onto Cupid's chest. And he wakes up and she sees his face. And the contract was she could only be his wife if she didn't know who he was. And now she knows who he was. And now she can't be his wife anymore. And now she's, of course, is madly in love with him and wants to get him back. So the mother, Venus, sets out these impossible tasks because she's jealous of her anyway, and she does not want her being married to her son. And so it's through going through these impossible tasks, and the impossible tasks are related to the different directions and the different elements. And it's about how we use these different directional elements. So when I say elements, when I talk about water, fire, earth, air, and they come in, and it's about her really recognizing that she's not alone in the world, even though we often think that we are. And so again, this is the god and goddesses, and these are the archetypal stories that we can work with within ourselves. Now, again, I was talking about my journey and how I'm on the fourth turning of a new hero's journey, actually. I'm on a new hero's journey. And so I'd like to introduce Carolyn Miss's archetype cards. And so this is something that I'll also put on my resources on my website so that you can come back to it, because they have so many different ones. I don't remember how many she has, but she probably goes through all of them, and then she gives you extra cards to fill out. And so she talks about how we all have 4 as a collective. And the 4 that we have are the child, the saboteur, the victim, and the prostitute. And that we are all of these. Now there's 6 different versions of the child. And so with that, looking at how, let me see if I can get this closer, looking at which ones resonate with you the most, and then putting them in order, right? Like, so, and the 6 are the child eternal, the child orphan, the child of nature, the child of magic, the child wounded, and the child of divinity, or divine child. And so we all have a dominant one of those within us, but it can all be one of those 6, right? We're not all going to have the same. Sorry, I dropped my card. But that we all sabotage our lives in a certain way. So it's the saboteur. We all have, the victim, in one sense or another, whether it's not, whether it comes through work, whether it comes through your life story, your experience as a child, something that's happened to you, an accident, a perpetrator, so many different ways that we can all experience what it means to be victim. And then we also have all had experiences with the prostitute. And what that means is selling yourself for selling your values, selling what you believe in, selling your truth, selling out to somebody else because of whatever. Sometimes that lives within the job you're working. Sometimes that's because, sometimes this is even within our relationships, or significant relationships, that say, I am going to sell out on what I truly align with, or what really, truly, I believe, because it's going to make peace with you. Because we're going to just sweep that under the rug, and I'm just going to be like, okay, I'm going to give up that part of myself so that I can have this part with you. Because so we get something from it, right? And it can be anything. It could be, it can be money. I'm going to take this job that kills my soul and I don't align with, but the money's really good. I'm going to be in this relationship with this person, even though I don't love them and I fight with them all the time and it kills me to be in this relationship with them, but at least I know I'm safe and I have a roof over my head, or I have food, or whatever, right? So we have to get real with ourselves. And sometimes it's hard for us to get real. That's us doing our work. Of course it's hard for us to get real with ourselves. Growth isn't easy. It's very uncomfortable, right? But this is where we call in these gods and goddesses, right? This is where we ask them to help teach us how to get deeper, more deeper connected to the lesson that we're learning from our experience, so that we don't have to do that again, that we can grow from it, that we can really master that part of us, that we know how to say no when it comes to something that we value, that we can stand strong in our truth. We can stand strong in who we are and say, no, I'm not willing to prostitute myself like that anymore. I'm not going to sabotage my, successes anymore out of fear. I'm not going to stand in the victim energy anymore like that, and really claim my healing, really claim, this part of me, or I want to strengthen this part of me, right? And so those are some of those shadowy aspects that we are, so the healing are the shadowy aspects. We can strengthen, the goddess Kuan Yin really can strengthen compassion. How do I strengthen my compassion in a world that drives me crazy right now, or whatever, fill in the blank? What do you need compassion over? Or compassion with somebody that might be in your family who might have who might be playing the archetypal energy of the addict. How do you have compassion for that person who's in your life that's constantly hurting you in some way, hurting your heart, but you love them? That's that unconditional love, right? And so there's just so many of these different cards: the lover, the alchemist, the athlete, the artist, the angel, the priest, the mentor. I mean, her deck is just beautifully packed full of so many of these different archetypes. And it's an invitation for you to look at your own life and what are the archetypes that are most predominant in your life right now, because who you were 10 years ago, some of your archetypes have shifted. Now, there may be some archetypes that have walked with you your whole life. And you could be like, yeah, I've definitely got that one, right? But then there's these archetypes that we're growing with, we're shifting with. And depending on what you're choosing in your life, if you're choosing a path of spirit, you're going to be constantly working with new ones, because you are being constantly challenged to grow yourself exponentially. And in growing yourself exponentially really has to take on how I see myself in all these different ways, so that I can see humanity in all of these different ways and hold that higher unconditional love, that compassion, that forgiveness, be the inspiration, be the light to help them look for their own healing within themselves, right? Or if you're not on that path, that is fine. But if you're just on a path of your own consciousness and just taking one step at a time and just wanting to be really good at what you're doing and really present and really connected into your own life and having an amazing experience with your own life, these are the ways we can just get really deep within our own self. So again, calling into the gods and the goddesses, because they are the original primordial archetypes of what we have living within ourselves. Now, each one of those are going to really kind of emanate or illuminate a certain archetypal energy within them. So, but that's a reflection within ourselves. Now, we're also nearing the end of our time together. And so there are many different types of archetypes, not just within these cards by Carolyn Myss, but there's also the archetypes that Carl Jung has, the 12 archetypes. There's so many different other types of archetypes. There's archetypes in the major arcana of the tarot deck, right? So I have all of these. I'm fanning them out. You're not going to see them very well, but we have the Fool, and we have the Magician, the High Priestess, the Empress, the Emperor. We have the Hierophant, the Lovers, the Chariot. So each one of those, even in tarot readings, are also an archetype of a representation of a collective experience, a collective energy that lives in every one of us, right? Now, medicine wheels, different earth-centered wisdom traditions work with the different medicine wheels. And within the medicine wheel, we have these 4 quadrants. And I was talking about them back even during summer solstice and during the, the hero's journey and whatnot as well. And even within the medicine wheel, we can have archetypal animal energies. So the First Nations of North America, some of the different medicine wheels are going to have different animals according to their nation, but we have like the buffalo in the north. We have the eagle in the east, the coyote in the south. We can have the whale in the west, depending on where you are. And all of them are going to be different according to each nation. South America, they have the hummingbird in the north. They have the eagle in the east, the serpent in the south, and the jaguar in the west. So these are archetypal energies, and they represent something. They represent what the West means. They represent what the North means, the cycles of life, what they mean. They represent, the elements of water, fire, air, earth. And so this is where we begin to deepen our relationship, deepen our consciousness, connecting in so much more into all of that, right? So I just want to thank you for being with me this evening. Thank you for playing archetypes and gods and goddesses. And again, getting back to the question that was raised a couple weeks ago, how do I know, which archetypes to work with, which god or goddess is just look within yourself. What are these areas within yourself that you would like to strengthen, or you would like to discover more deeply, powerfully, to really raise your own energy vibration? And that's a great start. And from there, it'll just continue to evolve, and you will find your way working with these gods and goddesses and archetypes. And I wish you an incredible journey along the way, right? And I wish you all love and the healing love, especially tomorrow. Tomorrow is the healing love for especially North America, or at least the United States. So I wish you all much love. We are at the end of our time here. Stay connected, connecting into yourself, connecting into others. Take care. Be connected. I'll see you next week.
This has been Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Join Andrea each week on an extraordinary journey, exploring the consciousness of energy and how you are connected. Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.